Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacey. I'm your host, Bob Gallagher. I'm joined in the studio today by a very special guest, Realtor Kenny Leva with the Carucci Group of Gibson, Sotherby's International Realty in Boston. Welcome to the show, Kenny.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me.
So you actually cover high-end residential real estate as well as commercial real estate.
Correct. So synonymous with the Sotherby's name, obviously, is that high-end residential property. Right. Our group does do a little special niche with some commercial property as well.
And what kind of commercial properties are you dealing with these days?
Right now I have an active listing, which is actually a performing arts theater. So, that would be one that's on the market now, but I've done a lot of industrial, specifically mill buildings that would convert into residential apartments.
Nice. And that seems to be a trend these days. It seems like it's happening everywhere from Boston all the way out to the western part of the state.
It does. And the reason being the quality of construction. Some of these buildings predate, 1900s, and the level of construction was just superior.
Right. So it's actually more cost-effective to rehab a mill building than it is to build from scratch.
Absolutely. You talk. Some of these mill buildings would be upwards of over 200,000 square feet. So think of the brick and the mortar and the.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So when a developer walks in and sees this type of property, the level of construction, the foundation ready to go, their eyes light up.
Right. So even with all the work that has to be done, I mean, a lot of times they have to be taken completely gutted, right?
Pretty much the case, yeah.
I mean, I saw them do this a lot in the mills on 495 in Lawrence.
Yeah.
And it looks like they did everything. I mean, new windows, new roofs. I mean, all that was really there is the foundation and the brick walls by the time they were done with it.
Correct.
But it's still a better way to go than building from scratch.
It is, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. What other types of commercial do you mentioned you have a listing that's a dance?
It's actually a theater that was built in 1912. It's a 560-seat performing arts theater with movie capability.
Oh, wow.
So during the current ownership, from the 80s up until 3 years ago, it was primarily a magic act.
Really?
And so when the magic act kind of dissolved,
yeah,
for the last 3 years, they've been just basically leasing it out to different promoters to do, live rock bands, comedians, and such. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
So what kind of an investor is going to want to buy something like that?
I'm not so much an investor, but probably keep it the same. So the highest and best use would be what it is right now, is a working performing arts theater.
Oh, that's cool. You don't see that every day.
No, and it's right in downtown Beverly. So it's really right into where you can walk to a new restaurant scene that's going on in the area, and you have some local colleges in the area too. So it's really a great fit.
Wow. What is that, near downtown Beverly?
It's right off of Cabot Street on Wallace Street. 13 Wallace Street.
Nice. And where can listeners get more information on that if they're interested?
Literally, you could go to 13wallacestreet.com. Actually, sorry, 13wallace.com. That's WALLIS. And we have a full website dedicated to that property. So.
Excellent. That's excellent. So why don't we talk a little bit about the high-end market?
Sure.
You cover predominantly in Boston and the suburbs for that?
Greater Boston and suburbs, correct.
Right. Yeah. Why don't you tell us about, you mentioned earlier you have a listing in, was it Lexington?
Yeah, we just listed a property about 13 days ago, 5 John Hosmer Lane. It's a 10-room, 8-bathroom home that was built in the 90s, but superior timeless construction. I mean, absolutely stunning home. I think right now it is the highest price listing in Lexington, but when you see the level of construction, you can realize why.
Wow. And can you share the price point with us?
Yes, it's $3.9 million.
$3.9 million. Wow.
And adjacent to it, the owner actually owns a 2.3-acre parcel that is zoned for the same type of home and approved that is going for $1.9 million. So the total package would be $5.8 million.
Wow. So that's what it costs to be able to buy a lot in Lexington these days.
Well, for 2.3 acres, that's buildable. It's that's an awful lot of land for that town.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough to come by any land in that town these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. Why don't we talk a little bit about the differences in the market, the overall average market for the rest of the state versus the really almost, it's fair to say, ultra high end market that you cover?
Sure. So, typically you're going to have a different type of buyer, for one. Once you get over a certain price point, the number of people looking in that price range drops dramatically. So when you get up to, some of the stuff we deal, $5 million, $6 million, $7 million and above, we really try to attract an international client because
Right.
most times than not, that's going to be a buyer.
Right. Because it's not like for $7 million price point, you've got 100 or 200 people that are going to come to the open house to see it, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, and typically we won't even have an open house.
Right. If you're not selling it to somebody on the Red Sox or the Patriots,
Right.
chances are it's international.
Exactly, and that's obviously Sotheby's brand is an international brand, so it's synonymous with some of those properties that we.
Right. And
We
what about
represent.
condos? You guys moving a lot of condos in Boston too?
Yeah, certainly there's a high-end condo market. The Back Bay, all around Boston. I mean, I just sold something in South Boston that went $50,000 over asking. Within a day.
Wow.
And that's the City Point section of South Boston, so it's not what people are thinking about when they see the seaport construction going on. It's really drifting out to those areas that, historically you would never see that type of number.
Wow.
You're seeing people go in to buy a multifamily in South Boston. They'll pay $1 million plus, and they'll sell a unit for $900,000. That's very typical.
So you buy a 3-family for $1 million and sell it for 2.7.
If not more. Yeah, when you're done converting it. Yeah.
Wow.
And they're fighting over them too.
Even a couple of years ago, that was still unheard of, wasn't it?
Correct.
So what happened? It's just people are getting that desperate now. There's just nothing left.
I mean, that's turning into a live, work, play area. You're going to hear this term a lot. Live, work, play. South Boston is really going to be the epitome of that right now.
Mhm.
So with the stuff that's going on, again with the seaport, and then you're dragging into those neighborhoods where these great restaurants are setting up shop. There's GE is in the area, so people are going to work in the area.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, they're moving people up from Connecticut, I think.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's excellent. Well, I guess when you really look at it, if you're living out in the suburbs, especially out as far as 495, you're looking at a solid hour and a half commute in
At least.
with traffic.
And the way home can get pretty.
Oh, the way home is ugly. Somebody was telling me the other day, even if you leave Boston at 3 o'clock now, it's a nightmare.
I know because I do it.
You do, oh, that's right. You are commuting out, aren't you?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's getting tough. So I can see why people see why it would be reasonable to pay $900,000 for a unit in South Boston, where it sounds like you can pretty much walk around wherever you need to go.
It's true, and that's really what people are looking for, especially the millennials.
Yeah.
And that's why rentals are still very strong, because they're the younger generation are renting and staying right in Boston. They're working in Boston.
Right.
They're dining in Boston. They're going to the movies in Boston. Everything's right. Walkable is another term you'll hear all the time.
Yeah, and it is a fun city. I go in myself a lot. I try to do it off hours, but
Right.
Going back to those South Boston condos you were talking about,
Yep.
What are you getting for the money?
You're getting, again, that what we just talked about. You get the upcoming seaport area, which is taking off. You get some of the new industry that's coming in. You get the restaurants. You get a lot of them have ocean view.
Really?
Yeah, and you're basically coming right off of 93. So and you got a direct shot over to the city if you're working on over the bridge.
Right. What about size-wise?
Size-wise, anywhere from, you can still get a decent size condominium for, if you're going to pay $900,000, you are going to get a little more for your money than you will in the Back Bay, obviously.
Right.
Or the South End.
So what is it? 1,200 square feet?
You
Or
could do a little better than that, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's not the 700 square foot closets that they're selling in the Back Bay.
Not
in
for
downtown.
$900,000, but you're still going
Yeah.
to pay a pretty penny.
Yeah.
500,000 range.
Wow, that's not bad.
Yeah. And that would be obviously an attraction.
Excellent. So, and I know I'm kind of switching gears on you, going back to the high-end stuff once you get out into the suburbs of the city. When you get into that, say, $3 to $7 million price range, what are you looking at for marketing times? Because, you were saying it's not like there's people just walking in the door to buy it. It's an international buyer you're looking at.
Yeah,
Do they
so
take longer to sell?
They do, and that's a conversation we have up front with the seller, that the expectation, that this is a niche home. The number of people looking at in this price range dramatically drops, so we're going to need a little more time on your listing. But that conversation's had, and everyone understands that right up front.
Right. And the people that are selling in those higher price range, are they typically international buyers? Or, I'm sorry, international sellers?
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've certainly had that case. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just wondering who it is that's selling those properties. Are they just ready to leave and head down south?
It's really the same reason why most people sell.
Yeah.
Right now, obviously, is a great time to sell.
Yeah.
And if so, certain people right now are downsizing. So same reason why. It's just different price range.
So basically just cashing out.
Correct.
What kind of features do high-end buyers expect in a home when you're talking about, $3 million
Yeah.
plus?
So when you creep over a certain price range, you're not a buyer's not expecting what you call a cookie cutter
Right.
type of property.
Right.
So they want some custom detail. Like this home in Lexington on 5 John Hosmer Lane has a three elevator that services 3 floors. It has
an elevator?
An elevator, yeah.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so that's a feature that someone may want.
Yeah.
This home took 3 years to build, so the level of craftsmanship that went into this is what people expect when they're going to spend that type of money.
Right. Yeah, so they're not expecting something that looks like it was purchased at Home Depot or Lowe's. They want something that's just completely custom.
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah.
Wow, that's nice. I can't imagine having an elevator in my house. And we have a finished basement too, so there are days that I really wish we did have an elevator.
Exactly.
But those aren't cheap. I'm guessing.
No, none of that stuff is cheap. When you know, some of the custom woodwork, you have exotic woods, mahogany, yew wood, cherry. I mean, floor to ceiling in some rooms, the whole room.
Wow.
So the price tag can.
I can't even imagine the amount of time it would take somebody to put something like that together.
Exactly.
Well, I suppose that's why it took 3 years to do it.
That's true.
Wow. You don't see construction like that anymore, though, do you?
You do. You do in certain areas. You certainly do. We work with some developers that have that that stand out from the rest, that provide that type of construction, and that's why they attract and they sell their homes quickly, and they attract that certain type of. They can put their home on for that price because of their quality.
Right. Now, are there any areas outside the city, say Weston, Wayland, Wellesley, that area? Do they have like land left for subdivisions for higher rent homes, or is it pretty much all like sort of older housing stock that you're buying when you're looking at that?
It's pretty much older housing stock. Very rare to have, especially in those towns you mentioned, to have a lot of buildable acreage available. Very, very rare. You'd have to really go out.
Yeah, because you don't really see it anywhere anymore.
Correct. And back to the Lexington property, that's why a 2.3 acre lot just for that one home is very desirable. And the current home sits on 1.5 acres. So you're talking about almost a 4 acre compound in Lexington, which is really unheard of.
Yeah, that's tough to come by.
Right.
Especially that close to the city, right?
Exactly.
Now, going back to you said you're looking at international buyers when you're in that higher end price range. Are they going more for the condos, or are they buying the single families as well?
It depends. They're doing it all.
Really?
Yeah, and it could be a lot of factors. So we see a lot of different money. We see money come in from Asia, which historically we've seen Saudi Arabia, Russia, and now we're seeing international money flowing in from Sweden in different areas. So there could be factors with their world economy, with their country's economy. If things are going, if there's a bubble maybe approaching, then maybe that's the reason why they're investing in America.
So they're diversifying, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah.
And that's a lot of people were speculating that the money that was coming in from Asia, in particular from China, was because of the turmoil with their economy.
Sure.
And a lot of those people that have the money tied up in nothing but Chinese assets are terrified they're going to lose it all.
That's part of it.
So I guess overpaying in Boston and other cities around the world for real estate in America, at least, kind of makes sense.
Yeah, what's happening in Boston is typically those investors were focusing on the West Coast. And now you're seeing what's been going on in Boston in the past several years is it's really that tier one international city. And it's the international investor is finding that it's a great place to invest.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the city has come a long way, especially in the last few years.
It really has.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about the election that's coming up? What kind of impact, if any, do you think that's going to have on housing, interest rates, prices overall?
Well, I think it always has an impact. Where sometimes when an administration changes, there's some volatility in the stock market, and what usually follows a stock market, whether it's a crash or some type of change, a lot of the thinking would be that the real estate market is going to follow. So certainly, it's going to be very interesting this year. This is a little different type of election, as you know.
Yeah.
So very interesting, but certainly would have an effect on the economy.
Right. It almost seems in some ways that our real estate market here in Massachusetts, and I suppose all places think this to some degree, but it almost seems detached from what's going on in the rest of the country, even the world. It doesn't seem like there's any sort of a bubble out here. It just seems like there's a massive amount of demand because we stopped building in the 80s the number of units that we needed to keep up with demand. And now the result is there's way more buyers than there are sellers.
Yeah, that could be true. And there's a real need for workforce housing.
Mm-hmm.
So that a middle income person is really having a hard time if they want to live in the city, in or around the city. So there's a high demand for that.
Is there any place left where it's affordable for working class Americans?
That's my point. So
Yeah, I mean, because even South Boston now is pricey by our standards, right?
it is. But luckily, right now we have a mayor,
Mm-hmm.
Marty Walsh, who seems to be really, he's really focusing on that. He understands the need.
Yeah, I think he set a goal for 30,000 affordable units
That's correct.
for working class
Yeah.
Americans. It'd be nice to see that happen because I mean, you figure if you're just an average guy making 50, 60 grand a year in the city, I don't know how you cover $3,000 a month for rent out of that.
Yeah, I think the good news is that he definitely is focusing on that. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to see some good results out of that.
That's good. That's good. And there's a lot going on up in Lynn. They're redeveloping the old GE parcels, I heard. They're supposed to put all sorts of new apartments up there, too.
Yeah, I just put a property under agreement in Lynn, actually, so I had some good conversation during the whole process, and Lynn is experiencing a good uptick in their market. Yeah, for
It's
sure.
about time.
Yeah.
It's about time. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on the show today, Kenny. I'm going to give out your contact info, so if anybody listening is looking to buy or sell high-end residential or commercial properties, give Kenny a call. He's with the Carucci Group at Gibson, Sotherby's International Realty in Boston, and you can reach him at 978-877-8194. Again, the number is 978-877-8194. We're going to take a quick break for some commercials. We'll be back with more Get Real after this.